Morning, everybody. I, Chair Gillette, call this live hybrid state plumbing board meeting of April 18th, 2024 to order at 9:28. Debbie, could you please take roll?
Yes, sir. Sir Curtis Gillette in the room.
Yes?
Thank you. Our vice chair is also in the room, Matthew Roselle.
Here.
Craig Anderson in the room.
Here.
Corey Fraser is not connected yet, but we'll come back to Corey. He is expected. Tyrone Bergen also in the room.
Here.
Thank you, Tyrone. Molly Keller, doesn't look like, maybe she's waiting. Just one moment. Jolie Bold. Joe? Joe, are you muted?
I can hear you barely.
Thank you. Molly Keller? Okay, Mr. Chairman, if you want to proceed without Molly, I'll just let you know when she connects. You're welcome to do so.
Yeah, that'll be great, and I'll pay attention as well. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome everybody. Does anyone have any changes to the late submission meeting agenda or the order of business? I hear none. I, Chair Gillette, rule the agenda approved as published. Does anybody have any changes to the draft minutes? I hear none. I, Chair Gillette, rule the draft minutes of February 15, 2024 final.
Mr. Chair, before you go on, Corey Fraser has now connected. May I call his name, please?
Yes.
Corey Fraser, calling for roll.
I'm here.
Thank you.
I would also like to add that, like Joe, I also can barely hear.
Okay,
It's
thank
very
you.
low.
I'll try to adjust the sound on my end.
And I'll try and speak a little louder as well, okay? Okay, the next scheduled meeting is June 13th, 2024. Now we're going to get to our written testimony and public comment. Pierre, could you address the public comment?
Thank you, Chair Gillette, members of the board. For the record, my name is Pierre Sabat, Policy Analyst with the Division. As of this morning, we have received one request for public comment to the board from Mr. Robert Greenway. Mr. Greenway, if you are here for public comment, please come forward, turn the microphone on, and identify yourself.
Hello, Chair and members. My name is Robert Greenway. I live in Dallas, Oregon. New to Dallas, been living in Dallas just a few months now in a new house. Came from California, but had lived in Oregon 20 years before that. Have, like I said, recently bought a new house. Have never got involved in politics or boards or anything like that before. The reason I'm doing it now is because of the new house that I bought and found out so many things that I never knew could happen with a new house, specifically from the contractor, which I guess I shouldn't name at this point, and then also from the contractor going to the board with the things I found out about my house. A lot of things I can't talk about because it doesn't pertain to this, but after doing all the different readings and everything, like I said, dealing with the inspectors at Dallas and the contractor, I was very stunned and scared of the things that I found and related to codes and reading about the codes. So I don't have a printer, so they suggested that I write the stuff down, so I'm just going to read off of what I sent you guys. From all that I have read, the reason for the building code is to protect homeowners and the health and safety of its occupants. Please refer to the 3 attached pics. They said that they would put up the pictures that I had sent in, so hopefully they'll come out. I'll show the location of a house shutoff valve and pressure regulator if needed. The valve box in the front of my home and the house that contains a shutoff valve, as with all 55 and older community in Dallas. I don't have respect to everybody else. I'm talking specifically about the area that I live in, Dallas. It's a 55 and older community that has approximately 300 residents. I don't think that changes anything for the code or what's done there. The boxes are pretty much accessible in the front yard, but I don't think what anybody thought about when that was allowed to put the shutoff valves in valve boxes in the front was what happens if you have to shut it off middle of the night, cold, rainy, frozen ground, as in the 3rd pic, which I don't know is there. This is what happened in the second week of January when they had the freeze. That's 3 inches of snow, not just snow, but frozen. You can't see a valve box. You couldn't find a valve box if you wanted to. You know, these people are mostly elderly people. It's 55 and older. I found out at being 3 months in the community that a majority of the people in there, especially from the first phase, have been in there a lot longer. A lot of them are more in the 75 to 85 range. A lot of them are single people. 60 out of the 300 are single women. There's no way that they'd be able to get out there, get to a valve box, and shut it off. You know, especially, I mean, this is day, even in the middle of the night. There's no way you could know where it was, no way you could find it, unless you put a flag up ahead of time. Even the guys that came out to put in my cable and stuff had to use a pickaxe to get to the boxes. So you can't expect an 80-year-old single woman to get out there. And then in the meantime, their house is flooding. They don't know what to do. They're trying to call 911 probably to get some of the fire department out there. So I just can't see the reason why. And there's another picture that shows how I think it should be done. Oh, that one there, that is a thing of my mom's house. I guess it doesn't really make a difference where it is, but that's a shut-off valve and a pressure regulator inside the garage. I mean, if you can run a line underneath the house and come up inside the wall underneath where the pressure regulator is, underneath the house. If that thing failed or something, you'd have to call a plumber out. You have to crawl on, they or I or whatever would have to crawl on their belly to get to it. If it failed, it needed adjustment. You know, I just don't, it just doesn't resonate with me, common sense, you know, that that either one of those valves would be placed where they would. At least if, I talked to one guy at the next door building there in the Building Codes Division, you know, and he said his valve is 400 feet away from his house. And he said that the first thing he did, and he's an inspector, put a shutoff valve in his house. And he said that the pressure regulator was in a box in the house, which is a little bit better than underneath, that you have to go to a crawl space and crawl on your belly for, you know, 30 or 40 feet, you know, to get to it. It's just impractical. You know, it'd be like putting your dipstick for your car under the back seat, you know, that's bolted down with car seats and stuff on top of it. It just physically doesn't make sense when it's so easy to do that. I mean, you got to put the valve in, you got both valves, the, you know, plumbing and stuff has to be done anyway. So what does it matter, you know, whether they do it? I don't know if it's why they don't do it, because they don't have to, whether it's a matter of cost, you know, to put it there, it saves them $20 in labor or $100 in labor, you know, when on the other hand, you know, I'm kind of going off script, one of the codes requires that you put in a HVAC, which, a whole house ventilation thing, which costs anywhere from 10 to 15,000, but you can't have a contractor, you know, spend an extra $100 to put a valve setup like that inside of a house. It just doesn't make sense to me. I'm not a good speaker. Let's see here, the thing, I told about the 60 things.
No, you're doing great.
Pardon me?
You're doing great.
Talked about the pressure regulator crawling underneath the thing. Like I said, it just doesn't make sense to me why these devices wouldn't be located, you know, in a safe place for the occupants to get, you know, to get to. There's just no. I'd like somebody to tell me why, you know, if there is a reason why it's allowed to be put in the ground and underneath the house, you know, it would be thing. That's what I found out, not just with the plumbing part. I've also worked on the mechanical division and stuff about different things that I found out, you know, about codes and stuff that just had, you know, no application and stuff. I think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, this was another thing that I didn't actually put on here. If my 5 minutes gets close, just holler at me. Water heaters, that's part of the plumbing code, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well, I just want to say a little bit about that, what I found out when, you know, with the contractors and the Dallas people who are the inspectors. And I thought it was just ludicrous when I went and the contractor came out and went over what they call an orientation and go over different things about the house, you know. Where the valve is, you know, showed it in the box. I said, well, where's the pressure regulator, you know, underneath the house? The whole house system, you know, which doesn't have to do with the plumbing, you know, said that it works a certain way, but it doesn't work at all. And I'm working that with the thing. But the thing about the hot water heater is in this day and age where everything, or they want everything to be more energy efficient. You know, cars, you know, houses, more insulation, all that stuff. How in God's green earth could they allow, whether it's you or whoever, allow a hot water heater with a pilot light? It wastes energy. I've talked to Northwest Natural. You can read their bulletin on it. There's almost no difference in cost between a electronic ignition and a pilot light. It costs the consumer, depending, I guess, on the model or something, I don't know, or the size, I've read $80 to $120 a year extra for a piloted gas water heater. Because the pilot light runs 24/7, 365. Where ignition, just like with the HVAC systems or your gas stove or whatever, you know, has the ignition. I mean, there's no reason why they should allow, you know, especially when there's really no difference in cost, why they would allow a pilot light in a water heater in a new home. Even my home in where I came from in Chico was 7 years old, and it had a electronic ignition. I come here and I asked the guy from, well, I guess I shouldn't say the name, why they would put in such a thing like, you know, that. All the houses, I've looked at them all that they're building out there in Dallas. Hundreds, I think almost 1,000 since they started this new subdivision stuff, and then they have building permits over the next couple of years. They're talking over 1,000 homes, and they're all, you know, anything that this one company built, which builds 80% of the houses there, they all do the same thing, a water heater on a cement slab with a pilot light. You know, I mean, I'm not a professional in any of this stuff, but, you know, it just doesn't make sense to me. It just has no place in a modern age, you know. It would be like, well, I don't know, having a gas guzzling car there, you know, they're changing it all the time.
So, thank you for your comments.
Yep.
And
hoping something can come
yeah,
up.
and just remember, we do have, I think Debbie sent you where you can fill out applications to request a code change.
Oh, okay, I'll look at that. I remember seeing that,
And to
but
make,
I'll look for that.
to make the shut-off valves is what you would like is more readily accessible than
Well,
accessible.
I would think not just me. I
No,
would
no,
think- I would
you-
think that anybody, everybody, I mean, you know, I'm the only one, just like on the whole house system. That new code's been out there for 2.5 years, right? And I'm the first one that's ever said anything about it, that they don't work.
And
And
you may,
that's pretty sad.
you're making a valid point. There's no arguing
I
that.
know, I've done my homework, I've studied it, I know more about the HVAC or the whole house system than the inspectors and the people that put them in, the contractors, you know.
Okay,
And the thing is too, is, you know, when you guys here are being able to listen to me, what I have to say, but I'll tell you up front that you have, the BCD has a website that says info@BCD for people to make comments, right? I've made multiple comments on that, and I told the guy Warren next door, you know, when I talked to him the other day, that I have not gotten one response to any email that I've sent in that case, even to the RMCM board or whatever, because I couldn't make the other meeting. I sent emails to them because I couldn't have a presentation because my car wouldn't start that morning, and I never heard anything from them either. That's why I come to these, because I'm able to talk to people because talking, you know, sending emails, you have these websites and stuff that you're supposed to be able to ask questions of. So I ask a simple question like I did about the hot water heater and stuff, you know, nothing, month. I can show you the emails and stuff. It's just unfathomable to me why you can't get an answer. At least we're looking into it. You know, we haven't had time. I got to give this to somebody else. You know, nothing.
thank you. That's awesome, and I appreciate your comments.
I appreciate you listening to me.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Mr. Chair, if I may interrupt again, Molly Keller did join the meeting quite some time ago before public comment.
I'm glad that you could express your opinions and views. Hey, Molly, how are you? She's here. All right, thank you, and I appreciate your time. Okay, well, we got to the point of the meeting. We are actually going to have an executive session with the board meeting today. And so the State Plumbing Board will now meet in an executive session at, looks like it is 9:47. The executive session is held pursuant to the ORS 192.660 for this session, which allows the board to meet in the executive session and to consider information or records that are exempt from the disclosure of law, including written advice from board counsel. Representatives of the news media and the designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All the other members of the audience are asked to disconnect from the audio conference board meeting through the Zoom and will be asked to leave the conference room. A representative of the news media are specifically directed not to report or otherwise disclose any deliberations or anything said about the subjects during the executive session, except to the state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in the executive session, and at the end of the executive session, the board will return to the open session. So we are coming back and welcome members and staff and public to join the meeting through the Zoom platform for the rest of the board agenda. Debbie, could you have we begin the executive session?
Yes, I'm going to ask all board members that are connected and the audience to disconnect from the regular public meeting and then connect to your executive session Zoom connection information.
And is there any particular room or anything where everybody can go?
Dana's going to take them.
The time is now 10:16, and the board has concluded the executive session and will now re-enter the public meeting. No decisions were made and no votes were taken outside of the public meeting. Debbie, can we go ahead and take roll again?
Yes, sir. Chair Curtis Gillette, stay
Here.
in the room. Thank you. Vice Chair Matthew Roselle,
Here.
Craig Anderson,
Here?
all three of them in the room. Tyrone Bergen in the room.
Here.
Tyrone, thank you. Corey Fraser,
Here.
thank you. Molly Keller.
Here.
And Joey Bold.
Here.
Thank you, everyone. Mr. Chair, we do have a quorum.
Okay, super. Thanks, Debbie. Okay, next on the agenda, we have Richard Donovan, Senior Policy Advisor for the Policy and Technical Services. And he's here to review the legislative update with the board in the audience.
Good morning, Chair Gillette, Chief Skinner, and members of the committee. My name is Richard Donovan. I'm a Senior Policy Advisor for the division and your legislative coordinator. Within your packet, you will find a very short legislative update. In this month ago, on the 7th of March, the legislature concluded a short legislative session, even-numbered year short session, odd-numbered years long session. The expression in the Capitol is short sessions are for fixing, long sessions are for doing. But this session, there was a lot of stuff that was done, even though it was a short one. And I think that we kind of touched on the three most notable bills that will impact the work of the division generally. They're outlined in your packet. I'll go through two of them here briefly. The first one that's notable is House Bill 4016, which regards our wildfire grant program. That is a program that came into effect in 2021 after the catastrophic fires that preceded that year. And it is a grant funding program for folks that are impacted by those fires. It has been variously extended over time. And this bill extends until 2025 that grant program. So we will continue to run that grant program through next year. At some point in the time, it could be possible that this transitions to the state fire marshal or it stays with us, unclear. But right now, we've been running that program. The second bill I would draw your attention to is Senate Bill 1521, which is a broad human services omnibus bill. In short legislative sessions, there's a very limited number of bills that can be introduced, so you will sometimes get bills that are omnibus bills that have broad relating to clauses. These are bills that you can throw basically anything but a kitchen sink into in terms of what needs to get done, and usually they're quite technical, and they have a broad and great number of things done. This is one of those bills for the human services arena. There's one part of it that regards our work and our oversight of residential facilities for adults and sprinkler requirements. There's an exemption granted in 2022 for sprinkler requirements for certain residential facilities. This bill, that exemption was set to expire in 2024. This bill will extend that exemption for a further 2 years as we continue to talk about policies to 2026. The third bill is kind of the big bill, Senate Bill 1527, which is about housing. And I'm not going to talk to you about that. Alana's going to talk to you about that. So I'm happy to answer your questions about the bills I've talked about or kind of other general stuff. Otherwise, I will get out of the way for the next agenda item. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Richard. Appreciate the update. Sure. Alana, you are going to provide an update as well. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Gillette, members of the board. So, as Richard Donovan mentioned, Senate Bill 1537 was the governor's priority housing bill, and it does a lot of things. It is a do bill, not a fix bill, and lots of important policy stuff in there, and two of those policies really directly impact the Building Codes Division and our work and the work of the board. The first is the creation of a new office between the Building Codes Division and the Department of Land Conservation and Development, the land use folks, as we call them. And so that new office, the Housing Accountability and Production Office, is going to be a joint venture between our two organizations. It's not a physical office, it's more of a concept of working together to promote housing and remove barriers to housing production that will be executed between our two offices. And so in order to support that work at Building Codes, we've reorganized ourselves a little bit, and we've created a new section at the Building Codes Division called the Housing and Building Safety section. And The purpose is kind of twofold. DLCD, the land use folks, have gotten a bunch of new authority to hold local government accountable when they violate housing laws. At building codes, we already have a lot of authority to hold local government accountable. They're our partners. We try to work things out, obviously, and work out problems between contractors and local government and that kind of thing. But we have lots of authority. We can revoke their programs, we can revoke individual certifications, that kind of thing. Well, the land use folks didn't have any of that authority on the land use side. If there were violations of land use law, that would always get settled in court. And so now they've gotten some of that authority, and then we will be able to pursue any issues we have with local government, either through our existing authority or through this new HAPO office, the Housing Accountability and Production Office, if that makes sense. But our intention, as always, is to work with folks to get things moving, and that's part of the bill also, is to be able to provide those services we provide today in terms of resolving disputes, clarifying code matters, kind of keeping things moving. So that's the first big piece. The other big piece, and one of the first things that the HAPO office will be undertaking, is a big process improvement study for building department processes. And so I think this piece is maybe the most applicable to this board in the sense that, you know, a rising tide lifts all boats. And if we can get permits turned around faster, have value-added inspections done quickly, and that good customer service that everyone's trying to do, that's good for the plumbing industry, the electrical industry, everybody. So we'll be undertaking a study to kind of look at what's going really well in local government processes, in our own processes as a building department, and where there's room for improvement, and how we can kind of take those best practices and spread them across the state, that kind of thing. And it's a soup to nuts look at it, which I don't think has really happened in Oregon in my memory, where it's not just the building, but it's like the whole development process. Where are there opportunities for improvement, including as things get handed off from one section to the other within local government? Are there areas to improve those processes? So the other piece is, you know, I think there's a recognition that the built environment is highly regulated, which makes sense. It's high stakes, it's public safety, but it can be confusing for customers where to go to solve their problems and figure out what to do. So what this joint office is going to try to do is coordinate the work of the enterprise on the government side a little better, so that if a customer comes to building codes or comes to DLCD to run down an issue, say with a water purveyor or something, we wouldn't just say, that's not us. We'd say, let's find the person at OHA that has the ability to run down that issue. Let's get you connected. Let's provide that kind of no wrong door customer service. And if it turns out that there's a barrier that doesn't make sense, or things have changed in the statutes and rules over time in a way that is creating a barrier to housing production, let's get it resolved. And so that's one of the things that this new office is going to try to do, is kind of provide that more holistic look at customer service and getting issues resolved that can be kind of hard to figure out where to go and who to talk to get them figured out. So Tony Rocco has been named our new HAPO manager. He was our structural program chief. But we're, of course, also going to work together at building codes and try to not silo ourselves and have the proper handoffs internally as well. But the idea is that that's kind of the single point of entry for, I've got a housing production problem and I need help figuring out what to do or how to solve it. But of course, you can always go to Andy with your plumbing issues, and we'll coordinate on that stuff as well. But I think that's kind of the short plan here for this new office. We're excited about it. We like to build things and solve problems at building codes, so I think this is kind of really in our wheelhouse, and I think there's some real opportunities for improvement. I will be convening, once we kind of get all of our boards to a place where they have chairs and vice chairs, we're going to be convening the chairs and vice chairs of all of the boards to talk about how we can work together to kind of do this housing work and make it successful, and also elevate issues so that someone can also, they can come to us with some issue they're having, but they could go to you as a chair or you as a vice chair, and that you know how to get that resolved quickly, that kind of thing. So you'll be hearing from us as soon as we can get some chairs and vice chairs on a few other boards that are working on that. But I'm happy to answer any questions you have or take any feedback on how you'd like to see next steps for this new endeavor we have.
That sounds great, Alana. Anybody have any questions, comments?
Craig Anderson, through the chair. So HAPO, is this basically a shared resource entity then, where although we've got Tony that's going to be heading it up, is it basically the existing staffs at BCD and DCBS that will be just working to blend and better communicate, or is there actually a new group of people that will be reaching out to these different existing divisions?
Thank you for the question through the chair. So basically, we asked for one position to undertake this new work, and that was relatively modest because we felt like a lot of what HAPO is being asked to do are things that we already do pretty well. I hope you agree, in terms of resolving disputes, providing good customer service. So we asked for one position. It's that manager position. So we'll be able to fill in behind Tony and get some additional resources for that team. DLCD is getting a whole bunch of new stuff they haven't done before, so they asked for a lot more positions. So they're going to have a HAPO manager and a whole team under that person, and enforcement and that kind of thing. And because of that, they're going to take the lead on some of the kind of administrative functions of HAPO. So the technology to run down complaints, folks will be able to submit a complaint to HAPO and get that resolved through HAPO. DLCD will do that intake, and then if it relates to basically anything about building codes or anything that's like construction related, once a shovel's hit the ground versus kind of pre-development, they'll take the lead. We'll take the lead on the construction related stuff, running that down. But they'll have a new team at DL. I can't remember exactly how many folks, but 10 or 12 folks, something like that. We got one person, and then we're going to kind of see how it goes and see if we need additional resources to kind of meet the needs of that office. But it is shared resources. It's not, like I said, there's no new office. There are just functions that we're going to do through this office as Building Codes Division and DLCD. Makes sense? Thank you.
That was all through the chair. What is the timeline for getting all this set up?
We are working out. We've got our reorganization done at Building Codes. The complaints, I'm trying to remember now if it's January or July of next year that HAPO is officially starting. I don't know if anyone has the bill, but it's next year that they'll start accepting complaints and that kind of thing. And then we're working to get the interagency agreement between our agencies done really quickly so that we can start working on the process improvement study and that kind of stuff. There's a sense of urgency because, we've got this housing crisis. We know we have a shortage of affordable housing, and the bill didn't end up passing in the long session last year, so we kind of lost that year. So we're trying to get things moving as quickly as we can, and to be ready to stand up the office and accept complaints. But in the meantime, we want to identify those barriers to housing production and work on solutions to those barriers. Another piece that the bill includes that I didn't mention is an expansion of our Ready Build Plan program. And so we're working on that right away to get rules in place that basically, where we provide plans to the public for free and they don't have to go through the full plan review process. We've done that in the past for things like pole barns and decks and that kind of thing, but not as much for occupied structures. And so there's a desire that we expand that into residential structures. So we're going to start with accessory dwelling unit plans and bring together local government plans and that kind of thing. So that's one of the things we're doing right away. And so we're kind of hoping to phase up so that by next year we're rocking and rolling. The other piece I didn't mention, sorry, you're going to regret asking me questions, is there was a Housing Production Advisory Council group that met over the last year that made a series of recommendations. And so some of what the Housing Accountability and Production Office is going to be doing is running down those recommendations, seeing if it makes sense to pursue some of those items and that kind of thing.
Will the non-occupied structures also be updated and included in that?
Yes, thank you for the question. So we're going to start with those and get those refreshed because they haven't been updated for a long time and they're not really code compliant at this point. So we're going to run those through a new process, and then the hope is that we can kind of work out any kinks with those plans getting updated, and then starting in 25, we'll work on residential structures.
Great, thank you.
Oh, HAPO, July 1 of next year.
I won.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Richard.
Okay, I do have a question in that, but I want to make sure the board is, anybody else have any questions? So this is great, and of course, it's hard to argue that making it easier and less frustrating is a great concern of ours and of anybody's, and I can confide or, you know, empathize with that. So what about utilities? Northwest Natural, the power, sewer, water, are they going to be involved with this as far as the passing off and making sure people trying to get some housing built has a nice pathway, I guess would be a good way to explain it.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the question. So yeah, HAPO is empowered to coordinate all of the entities that impact housing production, and the utilities are definitely one of those. Mm-hmm. They were present for several conversations during that Housing Production Advisory Council process and the Public Utility Commission as well, looking for those areas. I think that's one of those handoff things that sometimes can have. I learned a lot through that process about different challenges with utilities and some of the confusion, and also you know, are they accountable, or is it another thing that has to be pursued through litigation when there are issues with utilities?
Because that can be, hey, everything's great here, I can get my permits, but what? I can't get my utilities, and it's going to cost me this much to get my, and that can become a vicious circle all of a sudden.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that would be great if we can help in that regards.
Awesome.
Ty?
Tyrone Bergen, through the chair. Has there been any discussion on intergovernmental agreements, IGA for short, easier for my mouth, as far as sharing inspectors back and forth? I know that's been a huge issue where I'm at. I know I filled in for other jurisdictions, but has there been any discussion on that to make that process easier, having like a model for jurisdictions?
Yes, there has actually a very timely question. So yeah, the workforce to build needed housing has definitely been part of the conversation, including on the building department side, having enough folks and, you know, having enough folks in the right place when there's the demand to keep things moving. Because it's not, I think every building department wants things to move quickly and smoothly for their customers, but having the folks to send out to do the inspections is a big, you either have them or you don't, right? And so one of the things we've been working on is a master agreement for mutual aid, so that right now the way it works is IGAs are kind of individually executed between the Building Codes Division and local governments, and between local governments, so that they can say, oh, I've got someone, my only plumbing inspector is out on vacation for 2 weeks. Can you please come plug in and cover some inspections, that kind of thing. So what we're working on is an agreement where it just lays out the basics of how that works, how the money works, how the liability works, and then any local government can sign on, and that would create the ability for them to do those services between all of the people who have signed on to it. Does that make sense? By mutual agreement, so that you don't have to individually execute all of those agreements, which can be a challenge to go through that whole process. So we're going to try to do it one time. That's a new idea we've just been working on. So very timely question. I think it's going to be really handy.
That's something we struggle with, just the time it takes to get that paperwork through, way over my pay grade, but I know I can think of 2 jurisdictions that really need help, and it's just, that's kind of the issue, the roadblock, is the time that takes, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And the expense of having your attorney review every individual agreement and stuff. We're hoping we can
Exactly.
create some efficiency there.
Any other questions? Thank you, Lona. That's very informational, and we'd encourage you to come back and keep us updated, and then I'll be looking forward to, at some point, being able to get the boards together and see if we can assist in any way.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. We are moving to the plumbing program update. And Andy, the table's yours.
Thank you, Chair Gillette, members of the board. For the record, my name's Andy Skinner, Plumbing Program Chief for the Building Codes Division. I don't have a lot for the board today. It was this meeting's been pretty lengthy anyways, but what I did want to share with everyone is just kind of to give you the timeline breakdown of how we're doing on the SPI rule that was brought to the board a little bit ago for discussion. I don't remember exactly which board meeting it was, but there was some ask on some other things for maybe possibly getting into complex structures and all this other. But we landed at the SPI that has already been to the RAC. It went to the RAC on April 2nd. The public hearing will be around May 24th, and then it'll come back to the board for the board's approval, and then hopefully be filed and ready to go July 1st. And really just to kind of give an overview of that, it's going to expand the scope of the SPI certified inspector, which is your light commercial inspector. It's going to expand it to allow buildings 2-inch and less, where currently it's less than 2-inch. And then there's just some other clarity in there, and that's really the only change is the 2-inch, and then there's just some clarity in there that certification can also cover CAP inspections, and to take the clarification that we currently have on our website and fold that into the rule as well on existing structures. So I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Any questions for Andy?
Thank you.
Hearing none. Thank you, Andy. Okay, we're moving on to Emily Rogue, and we have, she's going to be discussing a case with Mr. Lee Skinner. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Gillette, members of the board. For the record, Emily Roque, contested case representative with the division. Before the board is a proposed order regarding case C 2023-0111 for Lee Skinner. You do have a memo in your packet regarding this case, but as a quick summary, Mr. Skinner applied for a journeyman plumber license on April 18th, 2023. The division denied that based on his failure to meet the qualifications of licensure. Mr. Skinner requested a hearing on the division's decision to deny his application, and on January 24th of this year, a hearing was held by the Office of Administrative Hearings. After the hearing, Judge Roberts issued this proposed order, which you have a copy of in your packet, agreeing with the division's decision to deny Mr. Skinner's application. So with that, the options before you regarding this case are to issue the final order and adopt Judge Roberts' proposed order, amend the proposed order and specify what the board would like to alter, or disapprove the proposed order and direct the division to approve Mr. Skinner's application for a journeyman plumber license. And I'm also happy to answer any questions regarding this case at this time.
Thanks, Emily. Anybody have any questions? I did review this, and everything looks to me legit, and unfortunately for Mr. Skinner, he didn't meet the requirements as required by the state of Oregon. No comments? Okay, we do need to make a motion on this.
You want to do it? Go ahead. So I move to issue a final order and attach the proposed order written by A.L.J. Roberts as attached, or as attachment 1.
Motion made. Debbie, do you want to take roll?
Yes, sir. Joe Leibold?
Aye.
Molly Keller?
Aye.
Corey Fraser?
Aye.
Tyrone Bergen?
Aye.
Craig Anderson?
Aye.
Vice Chair Matthew Roselle?
Aye.
And Chair Curtis Gillette?
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Debbie.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Emily. And Emily's going to stay here for a minute. We've got a couple items. Emily, do you want to go to the next?
Yeah, Thank you. Before the board is a summary of consent orders recently negotiated by the division on the board's behalf for settlement prior to hearing. We've entered into consent agreements in 6 cases since our last board meeting. All settlements, including the amount owed and suspended civil penalties, fall within the guidelines of the penalty matrix and contain standard conditions. Board action is required on these cases. Summaries of these orders are included in a chart in your packet, and we have also provided copies of the actual orders themselves in your packets as well. The first consent order is regarding case C 2023-0048 for Daniel Pine. The incidents occurred in Lake Oswego in March of 2022 and then in January and February of 2023. It involved the installation of PEX water lines, shower pans, connecting drain piping, a backwater valve, horizontal wet vet, new drain piping to toilet and sink, the connection of PEX water lines to a shower mixing valve, and the moving of a shower mixing valve. The violations determined in this case were failing to hold a journeyman plumber license on 2 separate occasions. So the initial penalty assessed in the notice was $4,000. The amount imposed in the consent order was $750, and $3,250 were suspended. The second consent order is regarding case C 2023-0153 for Ryan Hall Handyman Construction Services. The incident occurred in Salem in March of 2023 and involved the installation of a faucet and water line. The violations determined in this case were failing to hold a plumbing contractor license, allowing unlicensed work, and failing to obtain a plumbing permit. The initial penalty assessed in the notice was $6,000. The amount imposed in the consent order is $1,500, and $4,500 was suspended. The third consent order is regarding case C 2023-0154 for Ryan Hall, which is related to the case that I just described. The violation determined in this case was failing to hold a journeyman plumber's license. The penalty amount assessed in the notice was $2,000. The amount imposed in the consent order was $500, with $1,500 suspended. The fourth consent order is regarding case C 2023-0076 for Campbell's Plumbing, Inc. The incident occurred in April 2023 in Depot Bay and involved the installation of a new drain line, connection of a 45-degree elbow for a waste drain line, and the installation of new hot and cold water lines. The violation determined in this case was allowing unlicensed work. The penalty amount assessed in the notice was $2,000. The amount imposed in the consent order is $500, and the amount suspended is $1,500. The fifth consent order is regarding case C 2023-0167 for Ernest Guadalupe Rodriguez II, which is related to the case that I just described. The violation determined in this case was failing to hold a valid journeyman plumber's license. The penalty amount assessed in this notice was $2,000. The amount imposed in the consent order was $250, and the amount suspended is $1,750. The sixth and final consent order is regarding case C 2023-0129, Adept PDX Construction, Inc. The incident occurred in August 2023 in Beaverton and involved the installation of new PEX tubing for hot and cold water supply lines in the bathroom and kitchen, and the installation of a new shower control fixture. The violations determined in this case were failing to hold a valid plumbing contractor license and failing to obtain a plumbing permit. The penalty amount assessed in the notice was $4,000. The amount imposed in the consent order was $1,500, and the amount suspended was $2,500. Again, board approval or denial of these consent orders is required. You can choose to approve or deny the agreements as a whole or take action on each agreement separately. And I'm also available for any questions regarding these orders.
Anybody have any questions or comments? Anybody care to make a motion?
Craig Anderson to the chair. Motion to adopt the 6 cases proposed for resolution as outlined in the Enforcement Board report and issue final orders.
Debbie, care to take roll?
Yes, sir. Jolie Bold,
Aye.
Molly Keller,
Aye.
Corey Fraser,
Aye.
Tyrone Bergen,
Aye.
Craig Anderson,
Aye.
Vice Chair Matthew Roselle,
Aye.
Chair Curtis Gillette.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion carries unanimously.
Thanks, Debbie. Okay, Emily's got one more on the three cases that you wish to discuss.
Yes, thank you. Before the board, there are also 3 default orders. No action is required by the board. However, I'm available if you have any questions. The first default order is regarding case C 2023-0152, Jossie Plumbing Services, LLC. The incident occurred in Portland in August of 2023 and involved the installation of hot and cold PEX tubing. The violation determined in this case was allowing unlicensed plumbing work. The respondent for this case had previous enforcement history with the board. The penalty assessed was $2,500, and respondent's plumbing contractor license has been suspended for 1 year. The second default order is regarding case C 2023-0156 for James Milliken. This incident occurred in Eugene in the fall of 2019 and included the installation of a new kitchen sink, bathroom fixtures, toilet, vanity with sink shutoff valve, supply lines, and a P-trap. The violation determined in this case was failing to hold a journeyman plumber license, and the penalty assessed in the notice was $2,000. The third and final default order is regarding case C 2023-0168 for Jim's Handyman Services, LLC, and is related to the case that I just described. The violations determined in this case was failing to hold a plumbing contractor's license, allowing unlicensed work, and failing to obtain a plumbing permit. The penalty assessed was $6,000. Again, no action by the board is required for these default orders, but I'm available if you have any questions.
Craig Anderson for the chair. I noticed that these infractions for James Milliken were fall of 2019.
Yeah.
Why so long to bring this one to the front?
Yes, through the chair. I'm not entirely sure. This was not my case, but I do know that this case finally came through to the notice portion of the enforcement process semi-recently, and I think that this investigation had been long ongoing, and it is related to Jim's Handyman Services, and I think there might have been some other incidences as well. So I think it was just more of a complex investigation that took some time to complete, if that makes sense.
Does. Thank you, Emily. Any other questions? Thank you for your time and everything you do and your... Okay, moving on. Thanks again, Emily. We are going to move to the review and approval of our continuing ed courses. Pierre, would you like to introduce and discuss?
Thank you, Chair Gillette, members of the board. For the record, my name is V.A. Policy Analyst with the division. Our State Plumbing Chief, Andy Skinner, has been evaluating courses and instructors on the board's behalf. This past March, he reviewed 26 applications from 5 different organizations. 17 courses were recommended for approval. 9 instructors were recommended for approval. The matrix of these courses and instructors is provided in your board packet today. A motion will be needed to approve, amend, or deny our plumbing chief's recommendations, examples of which are outlined in your packet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pierre. Anybody have any questions?
Craig Anderson for the chair, and this is directed at Andy. Andy, there's line item 14, a course that Mike Diddy is applied for, super bloopers. And I was just curious as to what that's about.
Yeah, through the chair, Andy Skinner, Plumbing Program Chief. Craig, Mike has had this course for several code cycles, and really it's a course that kind of brings up those non-compliant type installations and how they could be addressed. And it's just not a straightforward class about, what happens always in the plumbing installation. It's more of kind of what could go wrong and what has gone wrong. And it's actually it was kind of an interesting class to review, but it has been approved several code cycles. But yeah, it's all the bloopers of plumbing, the bad
I
installations.
figured something like that, but I just had to know.
Yeah.
I might take that one.
As boring as code can be some of the times, a little blooper class would be fun. Okay, we do need to make a motion. Any other discussions before we move on? No? Okay, anybody care to make a motion?
Craig Anderson through the chair. Motion to approve the chief's recommendations for the approval or denial of the courses and instructors.
Debbie, could you take roll?
Yes, sir. Jolie Bold,
Aye.
Molly Keller,
Aye.
Corey Fraser,
Aye.
Tyrone Bergen,
Aye.
Craig Anderson,
Aye.
Vice Chair Matthew Roselle,
Aye.
Chair Curtis Gillette.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Debbie. Now we're going to have Pierre introduce and discuss with PHCC next. Pierre?
Thank you, Chair Gillette, members of the board. For the record, my name is Pierre Sabal, Policy Analyst of the Division. This agenda item was brought forward by PHCC through their Executive Director, Daryl Fuller. PHCC is seeking approval as a national organization continuing education provider for up to 8 hours at our state convention for code related and 2 hours for code related for each local live presentation. They are also seeking retroactive continuing education credit approval retroactive to October 1st and through the current code cycle. Mr. Fuller's letter is in today's board packet for his request. I believe we also have Mr. Fuller in the room today for any questions towards him. Andy and I are also here and can answer any questions. This agenda item will require a motion. The motion will require the board to specify the scope of course that I listed out and the hours and type of CE credits awarded, examples of which are in your help sheet today. I can also help the board through a motion if needed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Pierre. I would like to make a motion. Oh, before we do that, is there any discussions? Anybody have any questions for Daryl? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to make a motion to approve PHCC as a national organization continuing education provider. PHCC is requesting approval for up to 8 hours of our state convention, 2 hours for each live local presentation, and also for the classes during this code cycle, and retroactively approve continuing ed courses from October 1st, 2023 and through this current code cycle. And their code related courses. Debbie, would you please take roll?
Yes, sir. Jolie Bold,
Aye.
Molly Keller,
Aye.
Corey Fraser,
Aye.
Tyrone Bergen,
Aye.
Craig Anderson,
Aye.
Vice Chair Matthew Roselle,
Aye.
Chair Curtis Gillette.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Debbie. Before we close, does anybody on the board have any further questions or comments? There being no further business, the April 18th, 2024 State Plumbing Board meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Hey, thank you everybody for coming today too.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.